What's up, guys? It's your boys Wokey back at with another Chris Watts video, but this is one that's going to be completely a reaction video. So I'm pretty much going to watch it with you guys at home and my raw reaction because this video was sent to me by a viewer, subscriber, loyal fan, and it's the YouTube channel called Behind the Crime, True Crime. It's fairly new. It's only got 3 videos on this channel. I'm not quite sure where this channel came from, but the fan sent me the link, and we're going to watch it together. So if you guys could do me a solid favor and subscribe to this YouTube channel, we obviously want to because it's a new channel. Their work is fairly new. Let's get them out there. Let's help them out get to 1,000 subscribers. So like I said, subscribe, comment, like, and share. And then on my channel, make sure you guys are subscribing, commenting, liking, and sharing. You know what we need on YouTube, and we're trying to get to 100K on this channel. So subscribe, comment, like, and share. And without further ado, let's get into the video.
They look like the kind of family you'd see in a Hallmark commercial. A good-looking couple, 2 bright-eyed daughters, and a baby on the way. Their social media pages were a carefully curated mosaic of smiles, vacations, birthdays, and matching outfits. Shanann Watts was the engine behind this online portrait of perfection.
I can already tell this is going to be a good video.
She was active, expressive, and confident. A self-described Thrive brand ambassador and mompreneur. Her posts were frequent and polished. Daily updates, affirmations, and videos of her playing with the kids or promoting her business. Chris Watts, her husband, played his part too. Quiet, reserved, and physically fit, he appeared in videos with a calm demeanor and an affable smile. To the outside world, Chris seemed like the ideal husband.
This is like the shocking thing right here. Sorry, I needed
Helpful, steady, and supportive. Their daughters, Bella and Celeste, were adored by their online followers. Photos showed them giggling, singing in the back seat, or napping on their dad's chest.
My daddy's like
Shanann captioned each moment with warmth and affection. My little blessings, or Daddy's girls. But behind the camera, something was happening. Shanann's posts began to carry a subtle tone shift. More affirmations about strength, resilience, and loyalty. She started sharing more motivational content, especially about relationships and deserving more. Viewers didn't notice it at the time, but in hindsight, it was there. Cracks showing through the gloss. The irony? These online moments would later become critical pieces of evidence. They weren't just memories. They were timestamps, location markers, and emotional indicators. Detectives, lawyers, and the public would later scroll through her Facebook timeline like a breadcrumb trail through a collapsing life. At the time, no one suspected a thing. Neighbors waved at them in the driveway. Chris mowed the lawn. Shanann took the girls to birthday parties. They looked happy. But if you...
I am obviously very interested to see what conspires from this man's mouth for Nicole.
pause the video, if you zoomed in on Chris's eyes during those family live streams, there was a flicker, a hesitation, a detachment that didn't fit. And once you saw it, you couldn't unsee it. Shanann's rise as a social media personality wasn't accidental. Before Thrive, before the videos and lifestyle posts, she was a woman rebuilding herself from scratch. She'd been through a difficult divorce, battled lupus, and worked relentlessly to create stability for herself and her daughter. Then she met Chris. From the start, Shanann documented everything. Their first dates, their wedding, their new home in Frederick, Colorado. Her online persona wasn't fake. It was aspirational. But it also became a performance. The likes, shares, and comments weren't just engagement metrics. They were validation, proof that life was on track. As their family grew, so did Shanann's online presence. She filmed product demos from her kitchen, life updates from her car, and cute moments with the girls on the living room floor.
For those that are on the side of Shanann, like myself, do you think she posted too much? Do you think she posted not enough? Or do you think she should have posted more? Kind of thing. I think she was fine. I mean, I've definitely seen people that are far worse in posting and online presence and so forth like that. So I don't think it was bad. Chris, on the other hand, didn't like that public scene. But again, if he didn't like it, all he had to do was talk to his wife and say, "Hey, honey, I'm not about this. Can we keep myself out of this as much as possible?" There's so many YouTubers out there that have spouses that don't want to be online, but they don't murder their family.
She called her followers friends and often shared deeply personal insights, struggles with pregnancy, financial worries, marriage stress. Chris, by contrast, rarely posted. He didn't like being on camera. He smiled when she aimed the phone at him, but said little. Behind closed doors, he was pulling away, emotionally, physically, spiritually. Shanann could feel it. She messaged friends late at night, asking for advice. She complained that Chris had become distant, disinterested. It was a family on the brink, and Chris Watts had already made his decision. August 13th, 2018. It was supposed to be an ordinary Monday in Frederick, Colorado. The morning sun rose over quiet cul-de-sacs. Kids boarded school buses, and people drove off to work. But something was already off at 2825 Saratoga Trail.
Like, listen, I don't know about you, but it seems that listening to him, I can paint my own like picture of what happened that morning. So I could be technically blind, and with him describing things, I could paint like the image of myself of what happened. I don't need AI to do it or other pictures. Like just going like this and just seeing the motion, like that's why people read because you can build the imagination how you feel. And listen to this guy, I could like fall asleep right now and just listen to it.
At 8:15 a.m., Shanann Watts missed her obstetrics appointment. She was 15 weeks pregnant and had never skipped a checkup. Her friend and colleague Nicole Atkinson
Thank
had dropped her
God.
off from a work trip the night before and immediately noticed Shanann seemed unusually quiet, drained. Still, Nicole didn't expect her friend to go radio silent the next morning. By 9 a.m., text messages to Shanann went unanswered. By 11 o'clock, her phone rang without response. And by early afternoon, Nicole wasn't just concerned, she was alarmed. She drove to Shanann's house, rang the doorbell, knocked,
Nothing.
and finally called 911. It wasn't just that her friend was missing, it was the eerie stillness of the house. Shanann's car was still in the garage, with the girls' car seats inside. Her shoes, ones she always wore, were by the front door. No sign of forced entry, no commotion, no chaos. Frederick police responded quickly. By 1:40 p.m., Officer Coonrod arrived and began the initial wellness check. Chris Watts pulled up shortly after, wearing a backward ball cap and a calm expression. He unlocked the door. He led them through the house. He explained that Shanann had said she was taking the girls to a play date that morning. Maybe she just didn't tell anyone where. But Nicole didn't buy it. She insisted Shanann wouldn't vanish without telling her. And then they found her purse and her phone. Still plugged in by the couch, Shanann's phone was the first red flag that couldn't be rationalized away.
I don't think it was plugged in.
She never left it behind. Not for 5 minutes, let alone an entire day. Chris's behavior during this check would later be dissected by millions. He was cooperative, but oddly detached. He joked with officers. He looked at his phone. He didn't cry. The house was neat.
Man, this image is just like really haunting.
Neat.
Just
Too neat.
just know it technically looked like this with Chris driving down the road.
No signs of struggle, no blood, but an emptiness that felt deliberate. Nichols' 911 call, captured on body cam, marked the beginning of what would become one of the most chilling missing persons cases in modern American history. And in that first afternoon, no one, not even the officers, realized just how quickly this case would spiral. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the Rockies, news of Shanann's disappearance began to circulate. Chris Watts stood in the driveway, arms folded, giving interviews to local TV reporters. His face was composed, his tone calm, even hopeful. He said he just wanted his family back. He asked Shanann to come home. He said they'd had an emotional conversation the night before, but insisted she was just gone. But something didn't sit right. Not with the reporters, not with the police,
Chris.
and not with the internet. The footage of Chris's on-camera plea spread fast. People online began dissecting every blink, every shrug, deflection. Why wasn't he looking into the camera? Why was he smiling? Meanwhile, investigators were quietly building a picture, and it didn't match Chris's version. Inside the house, they saw no sign of a woman packing up and leaving voluntarily. No clothes missing, no toiletries taken, no diapers, wipes,
Because they were gonna make it sound like an accident. I still think that explosion theory could be possible, but again, we don't know.
or snacks for the girls. Only absence. Chris said Shanann took the girls to a friend's house, but he couldn't name which friend. He said she left her phone behind by accident, but it was plugged in, charging, exactly where she always left it at night. Even the family dog Dieter was still at home, unfed and nervous.
Dog
Shanann
friendly
would
Chris.
never have left him behind. When Chris left the police that night, officers were already talking in hushed tones. One of them reportedly said, "This doesn't feel like a missing persons case. This feels like a cover-up." At the same time, Shanann's friends were mobilizing. Flyers went out. A Facebook group was created. News trucks began parking on the street. Neighbors were interviewed, and surveillance footage started to surface, including a critical clip from the next-door neighbor's security camera. It showed Chris backing his truck into the driveway in the early morning hours of August 13th. Unusual. He never parked like that. And he spent over an hour loading something, or someone, into the back.
I don't.
Investigators requested a formal interview. Chris agreed, but the tension was rising. Something wasn't right. Not with his body language, not with his timeline, not with his eyes. And the next day, he would walk straight into a polygraph room. August 15th,
Failed
2018.
miserably.
Just 2 days after Shanann and the girls were reported missing, Chris Watts voluntarily walked into the Frederick Police Department to take a polygraph test.
I bet they if they went through his like history on the online, or they, I mean, they did because they also found out that he was trying to say when to say I love you, when to say whatever have you. But I still think that this man Googled how to pass a polygraph. I think he did, but
To the public, it looked like the actions of a concerned husband. To investigators, it was a calculated risk, one they believed would break him. The test was administered by Tammy Lee, a seasoned FBI agent and polygraph expert. From the moment Chris sat down, the interview room became a stage.
those
2
eyes.
chairs, 1 table, no distractions, just a man under pressure and a woman trained to read more than just words. Before the wires even went on, Tammy started the real work, the pre-interview. This phase wasn't just about calibrating the machine. It was about psychology. She asked about his relationship with Shanann. She pressed gently on his emotional state. She asked how he slept, how he felt, what he thought might have happened. Chris answered everything, calmly, methodically, flatly. But his answers had gaps. He claimed Shanann had returned from a business trip around 2 a.m., and they'd had an emotional but civil conversation.
I think they went to sleep. And then in the morning, when Chris was fondling with all his stuff downstairs, whatever, getting ready for work, that's when Shanann wanted to speak with him. And then she was caught off guard.
He said he'd left for work early in the morning and hadn't seen his family since. He had no theory about where they were, no guesses, no breakdowns. Tammy noted it all. Then came the test itself. Chris was wired up, asked a baseline series of questions. His name, the date, basic facts,
I wish they would have asked, did you have help?
followed by the real ones. Did you physically harm Shanann? Do you know where Shanann is now? Are you lying about the last time you saw her? The needles on the machine moved with every breath, every pulse, every microscopic tremor. Afterward, Chris looked hopeful. He thought he'd passed, but
Failed
Tammy didn't
terribly.
flinch. She left the
-4 he had to have to fail. -14 or 18. Yeah.
room, spoke to her team, and came back with a statement that would become iconic. Chris, she said, you did not pass the polygraph. He froze. She leaned in. Now is the time to be honest. Chris didn't speak right away. He blinked. He stared at the floor. He rubbed his hands together and tried to form words, but nothing coherent came out. Tammy Lee didn't raise her voice. She didn't accuse him. Instead, she gave him an exit. Maybe this was an accident. Maybe Shanann hurt the kids. Maybe you were just trying to fix it. It was a carefully calculated move, a known interrogation tactic called the minimization technique. The goal wasn't to shout someone into a confession. It was to give them a version of events that felt survivable. But Chris still didn't bite. So they brought in a second interrogator, Graham Coder from the FBI. He was softer, more paternal. He sat close. He told Chris that now was the time to stop pretending, that they already knew something had happened.
Bad cop.
We can't help you, Coder said, if you don't help yourself. Chris nodded slowly. His jaw tensed. He whispered, I just want to talk to my dad. Investigators seized the opportunity. They brought in Ronnie Watts, Chris's father, a quiet man from North Carolina who had driven to Colorado to support his son.
He flew.
Ronnie walked in, unaware that the next 10 minutes would change everything. Chris looked at his father. He hesitated. Then, quietly, he said, She hurt them. And then He didn't finish the sentence, but the implication was clear. He was now claiming that Shanann had killed the girls, and that he, in a rage, had killed her. It was a story detectives didn't believe, but it was a confession. And now, Chris Watts had officially gone from grieving husband.
There's people thinking that Chris Watts's rights and constitutional rights were upheld, or not upheld, but um, not respected. The man murdered his family. Does he deserve rights and respect? Not really.
To suspect. The mask had cracked. But the truth, the real truth, was still buried deeper. And the next morning, they'd find it in an oil field. While Chris was sitting in the interrogation room spinning half-truths, investigators were already closing in from another angle. Technology. Chris drove a company truck for Anadarko
GPS.
Petroleum. That truck was equipped with GPS tracking, and it revealed something chilling. In the early morning hours of August 13th, the same day Shanann was reported missing, The truck had left the Watts home at 5:27 a.m. It traveled to a remote oil site called Survey 319, a desolate.
I don't remember some of this. Also saw a picture of Shanann on his lock screen. Kessinger knew he was married and had children. He knew Kessinger lied and said that he. Oh. So it says in here he has not talked to Kessinger since his arrest. He didn't wear a wedding ring. Texted him when he was working in the field and their text messages to each other kind of went to a different level. Kessinger about them meeting up after he returned from a trip with Shanann, San Diego, which was in June. He initially thought his relationship with Kessinger was just flirting at work. It's not flirting when you start texting. It's called cheating. He wishes he would have worked out in the field, so he never got close to Kessinger. When he became a field coordinator, he was forced to spend more time in the office, and he would constantly run into Kessinger. He wished he could talk to Kessinger one last time to apologize to her about what happened, what she went through. He didn't know if Kessinger had received counseling or if she had to leave the state due to the publicity of the case. Who cares? She put herself in that spot. Kessinger refused to speak to Watts slash attorneys. He hoped Kessinger found normalcy because Anadarko was her dream job. How's a dream job? Safety coordinator. Okay. With regards to if he loved Kessinger, I felt like it was true.
Patch of land nearly
It was
45 minutes
lust.
away. Chris claimed he had gone there to check on a leaking oil well, but GPS data showed he stayed at that site for nearly 2 hours, far longer than any normal maintenance job. That location now became the focus of the search. Meanwhile, Chris was taken into custody on suspicion of murder. He had confessed partially, but investigators knew his story didn't match the evidence. They filed for search warrants for the oil site, and the next morning, a team of technicians, cadaver dogs, and forensic examiners headed out to Survey 319. What they found would end the search and break the nation's heart. Before officers even arrived at the tanks, dogs signaled human remains in the surrounding brush. And then they saw it, a shallow grave, covered loosely with dirt and brush. Inside, they found the body of Shanann Watts. She had been wrapped in a sheet, one that matched her bed linen set back at the house. A few yards away, officers inspected the two oil tanks, massive, metal, and sealed. When the lids were opened, the forensic team made a horrifying discovery. The bodies of Bella and Celeste were inside, each deposited in a separate tank. The openings were only 8 inches wide. To place them inside, Chris would have had to force their small bodies through those narrow hatches. It was unthinkable, but now, undeniable.
There's things in here I've never even seen. He read books about dads could never hurt their children, and he has wondered, was I even a dad at that point or one point? He wanted his whole life to be a dad, and then nothing made sense, including the oil tanks. During the ride, the girls were dozing on and off, held each other, and laid in each other's laps. During the ride, Bella said, "Daddy, it smells." Oh, I wanna. When he got to the oil site, he took Shanann out of the back of the truck and pulled her over and laid her on the ground near where she was ultimately buried. Bella and Celeste were still sitting in the back of the truck as he removed Shanann. Bella and Celeste asked him, "Where are you doing to mommy?" He doesn't recall what he told them. He probably didn't say nothing.
The crime scene was processed for hours. Photos, soil samples, fingerprints, everything was logged. Forensic teams used special tools to extract the remains from the oil mixture, preserving as much evidence as possible.
See, even in here, they said strangled. There's a difference between strangled and smothered. She was smothered.
By that evening, the story had gone from a missing persons case to a national tragedy. Cable news stations interrupted
So they're looking that is strangled and smothered the same thing? That doesn't make sense.
broadcasts. Twitter exploded, and people everywhere asked, why? But before the country could get answers, the police needed one more thing, a full confession. And they were about to get it. The recovery at Survey 319 was among the most emotionally devastating crime scenes ever documented in Colorado. Even seasoned investigators struggled to process what they were witnessing. Shanann's shallow grave was barely concealed, a symbolic gesture of disposal rather than concealment. Her body showed no signs of external trauma visible to the naked eye, but the sheet she was wrapped in would later reveal trace evidence. Nearby, detectives recovered a rake, believed to have been used to cover the
That was
soil.
broken.
Everything about the burial was hasty, rushed, panicked, and deeply impersonal. But it was the oil tanks that truly horrified the forensic team. Bella and Celeste had been submerged in crude oil for nearly 48 hours. The temperature inside those tanks reached extreme levels, and the corrosive environment had already begun to affect the remains. Extracting them required industrial.
He should feel what he did to his family. I wish he could feel the pain, the agonizing torment that they endured. Chris should get that feeling.
Tools and protective hazmat suits. The openings, just 8 inches in diameter, raised immediate forensic and psychological questions. How could a father do something so mechanically calculated to his own children? What was going through his mind as he lifted the lid, hoisted each girl, and forced them through? Autopsies would later reveal bruising around Bella's mouth, and a heartbreaking detail. She may have been alive, or at least conscious, when placed in the tank. She had fought back. Celeste, younger and smaller, showed no such defensive signs. Her death, too, was brutal, but quieter. The oil preserved some trace evidence: hair, fibers, skin cells. It all told a story Chris Watts tried to erase, but couldn't. Back in the forensic lab, investigators reconstructed the timeline using GPS, phone pings, and surveillance footage. They matched the truck's route to Chris's cell phone data and home security logs. Everything lined up, but not with his story. Even more damning were the interviews with neighbors. One of them, whose security camera had captured Chris's early morning truck activity, told police he never backs his truck into the driveway. Never. That was the first time. And that night, when police showed that footage to Chris in the interview room, his composure cracked. He put his hands on his head. He mumbled. He shifted in his seat. The illusion was unraveling. Frame by frame, GPS ping by GPS ping, the evidence was now over.
He was probably thinking about what he wanted to do in this whole thing, but when he put it out into motion, he's like, this is not going to work. And he started freaking out. You know, you have those moments where you like think about it before you do it. And then you're like, yeah, why was I thinking that to begin with? Chris just was stupid enough to do it.
Overwhelming. The only thing missing was why. In every true crime story, there's a pivot, a moment when everything shifts. For Chris Watts, that moment had a name: Nickel Kessinger.
Ooh, here we go.
Nickel was a geologist at Anadarko Petroleum, the same company where Chris worked. They met in the summer of 2018, just weeks before the murders. It started as casual flirtation, friendly exchanges, shared jokes,
possibly fall,
late-night texts. But it escalated quickly. Nickel told investigators that Chris portrayed himself as a divorcing father, a man emotionally distant from his wife, looking for peace and a fresh start. He never told her Shanann was pregnant. He never mentioned any real plans to fix his marriage. He presented himself as already halfway out the door. They began seeing each other frequently. Dates, intimate weekends, late-night phone calls that lasted for hours. Chris saved selfies from Nickel on a secret calculator app.
So right here, what it shows down here, you guys, I've always wondered if Nicole Kessinger had some type of connection to the name of Nico. I mean, Kessinger's is Nicole Lee, which Nicole Lee would have been Shanann's son, but Nicole Lee Kessinger. It's crazy how like close it is. How close it is, close or how scary close it is. So when people ask, did Kessinger possibly? No, it is Shanann. Shanann liked the name. He wanted to spell his son's name Neko, and then Shanann said no, it's Nico. I like the Neko. I'm not gonna lie, I think that's kind of cool.
He looked up
Go.
vacation spots on his phone, romantic getaways, future plans. He Googled wedding songs and how to start a new life after divorce. But there was a catch. Chris didn't file for divorce. He didn't tell Shanann about Nickel. Instead, he kept living both lives,
He liked
smiling
attention.
on camera with his family, then texting Nickel minutes later about how much he missed her. As the weeks went on, Shanann became suspicious. She saw him growing more distant. He avoided physical affection. He seemed emotionally checked out. In one message to a friend, Shanann wrote, "He's not touching me. He doesn't talk to me. I feel like I'm living with a stranger." Meanwhile, Chris told Nickel everything was fine. He said he was handling things. He assured her it was almost over. What Nickel didn't know, what she couldn't have known, was that Chris had no intention of negotiating a separation. He was
Mm.
preparing something else. And as the date of Shanann's return from her business trip approached, Chris's internet history revealed a chilling trail. Searches for how to delete Facebook, can police trace text messages, and what happens to cheating husbands in divorce court. Nickel would later tell investigators that Chris seemed nervous in those final days. He told her he was scared and overwhelmed, but he never admitted what he was planning. By the time Nickel realized something
Oh, he was scared. Oh, what about his wife and his unborn child and the two little ones?
was terribly wrong, it was already too late. Chris Watts wasn't just cheating. He was fantasizing about a completely new life, one that didn't include Shanann, Bella, Celeste, or even the baby on the way. Investigators would later uncover a disturbing amount of digital evidence showing how far he had mentally detached from his family. In the weeks leading up to the murders, Chris had created a new financial budget. It didn't include diapers. It didn't include preschool. It didn't include Shanann's medical expenses.
Butt
It was a
stuff.
single man budget, a clean
Oh,
slate. He Googled starting a new life and how to prepare for separation. He deleted text messages, wiped apps, and even began looking at apartments.
he didn't want
But
to
he
pay
never
child
consulted
support.
a divorce lawyer because in his mind, divorce was messy. Murder was final. Nicole Kessinger, for her part, insisted she had no knowledge of what Chris was planning. When confronted by detectives, she was visibly shaken. She cooperated fully, handing over her phone, her search history, even her personal notes. She told them she would have never continued the relationship if she had known Shanann was pregnant, or even that the marriage wasn't actually ending. But public sentiment quickly turned on her. Within days, her name was dragged through every newsfeed and YouTube comment section. People called her the mistress, the reason, the motive.
Dang
She
straight.
received threats. She had to go into hiding.
I've never threatened. I just want her investigated.
Yet all signs still pointed back to one man. Chris had built a fantasy, not just of being with Nickel, but of erasing every obstacle between him and that fantasy. To him, Shanann wasn't a wife. She was a barrier. Bella and Celeste weren't daughters, they were complications. And the pregnancy? That was the final trigger. In the aftermath, psychologists would argue that Chris didn't snap, he planned.
Oh yeah.
Every search, every deleted file, every detail of that morning. By the time he loaded the truck, the murders had already happened in his mind. Nicole never asked him to kill, but Chris believed that only a total reset would give him what he wanted: a clean future, a new woman, and no trace of the past. After the partial confession in the interrogation room, the story that Shanann had killed the girls and Chris had reacted, investigators
The past is always there. You can't get rid of the past. You could try to forget it, but it always creeps back.
weren't satisfied. They didn't believe it. Neither did the public. There was no evidence to support Chris's version. No signs Shanann had harmed the children. No motive, no prior behavior, no forensic proof. The confession felt manufactured, an attempt to soften the blow, to shift some of the blame. And so, prosecutors applied pressure. They charged Chris with 5 counts of first-degree murder, one for each family member, plus additional charges for the deaths of his daughters under the age of 12. They added tampering with a body and unlawful termination of a pregnancy. Chris was now facing life without parole, or worse. At first, he stayed
I
silent.
wish the devil.
His legal team weighed the risks of going to trial. But public outrage was growing by the hour. The evidence was airtight. and a jury would not be forgiving. So, on November 6th, 2018, Chris made a decision. He would plead guilty to all charges. No trial, no defense. Just a single devastating admission. He had killed his pregnant wife and both of his daughters in cold blood. In court, his voice was barely audible. He answered the judge's questions with, "Yes, sir," and "No, sir." He never made a statement. He never explained why. Shanann's family was there. They wept quietly as the judge read each count aloud. The courtroom was silent, heavy with disbelief. Outside, reporters scrambled to update headlines. Social media exploded, and Nicole Kessinger, who had disappeared from public view, was watching from the shadows. But for many, the plea wasn't enough. They
They say that Nicole was Kessinger was in one of the courtrooms that was there, but we have no confirmation, unfortunately.
wanted to know what really happened inside that house, what the girls said, how it all unfolded. The confession covered the crime, but not the truth. That would come months later in a Colorado prison. In February 2019, 3 months after his guilty plea, Chris Watts sat down for a 5-hour prison interview with agents from the FBI and the Colorado Bureau of Investigation. He waived his right to counsel. He said he was ready to come clean. What followed was one of the most disturbing and detailed confessions ever recorded in a true crime investigation.
I still want to know if you guys want me to listen to that uncut interview with my reaction. I've heard some people want it, some people don't. I just want to know how much of you guys would like to see that video.
Chris began by admitting what everyone already suspected. His earlier version, that Shanann killed the girls, was a lie.
Of course it
He had
was.
killed them all. He said it started with an argument in the early morning hours of August 13th. Shanann confronted him about the affair. She told him she knew about Nickel and said he'd never see the kids again. That's when, according to Chris, he snapped. He got on top of her in bed and strangled her with his bare hands. He told investigators he felt nothing. No rage, no panic, just silence. Then Bella came into the room. She saw Shanann's body and asked, "What's wrong with Mommy?" Chris told her Mommy wasn't feeling well. He wrapped Shanann's body in a sheet, dragged it downstairs, and loaded it into the truck. Then he placed his daughters, still alive, into the back seat with their mother's body lying at their feet. He drove 45 minutes to the oil field with them sitting in silence. Bella reportedly asked, "Are you going to do the same thing to me?" At Survey 319, he smothered Celeste first. Then, Bella. According to the autopsy, Bella had bite marks on her tongue. She fought back. She screamed. She knew. Chris said she was the last to die. He said her final words were, "Daddy, no." The room where Chris gave this confession was silent. No one interrupted him. No one asked why. They just let him speak. And when it was over, there was no mystery left. Only horror. Even in death, Shanann Watts left behind a voice that couldn't be silenced. Her social media posts, texts, voicemails, and videos painted a vivid portrait of a woman fighting for her marriage, her children, and her sense of self. She wasn't naive. She sensed something was wrong. Friends described her as increasingly anxious during the final months. She told them Chris was distant, cold, distracted. And yet, she clung to hope. In text messages to a close friend, Shanann wrote, "He says he's not in love with me anymore. He said we're not compatible." She followed it with, "I'm trying to fix it. I'm fighting for our marriage." During her work trip to Arizona, she texted Chris, "I miss you. I miss your laugh. I miss holding you. I miss everything about you." He didn't respond. The texts grew more desperate. She started to ask if he was seeing someone else. She even searched his phone bill records, trying to make sense of late-night calls to unknown numbers. But Shanann didn't just communicate with friends. She documented her life publicly, for clients, family, and followers. Her Facebook videos were filled with laughter and affection. She often filmed the girls playing, dancing, or cuddling with Chris. The optics were perfect, but her private writings told another story. In a draft letter found on her phone, never sent, she wrote, "You've changed so much. I don't know who you are anymore. I feel like you're here, but you're gone." She was trying to hold a family together that was already gone in his mind. One of the most haunting videos she posted was of Chris surprising her with a baby announcement shirt, months earlier, when he still pretended to be excited. The video shows her smiling, holding a pregnancy test. Chris is awkward, quiet, and offers a forced hug. Even the audience noticed. Comments under the video. Why does he look so weird? He doesn't seem happy. In retrospect, Shanann's digital trail was more than documentation. It was a testament, a record of love, fear, and confusion. A woman desperately trying to keep her family whole, unaware that it was already being dismantled. She left behind more than evidence. She left behind truth. In the chaos of adult lies, emotional detachment, and hidden affairs, it's easy to forget who suffered the most. But the final days of Bella and Celeste Watts, known lovingly as Cece, are the darkest, most painful part of this story. They were just children. Bella, 4 years old, was gentle and observant.
So
Cece,
cute and
only 3,
adorable.
was feisty, curious, and full of energy. Together, they were inseparable. Two sisters creating a world they trusted completely, especially when it came to their father. Photos from those last weeks show smiles, ice cream cones, pool days, and family outings. But beneath the surface, their world was unraveling. Chris was growing more distant. Shanann noticed it. The girls felt it. One friend recalled Bella asking her mother, "Why doesn't Daddy play with me anymore?" It wasn't just a childish whim. It was emotional recognition. A daughter sensing something adults tried to hide. The
They
weekend before the murders, Shanann had been on a business trip. The girls stayed home with Chris. We don't know exactly what happened in those 48 hours, but surveillance footage shows them returning from a birthday party. The girls were tired. Chris was quiet. And then, the morning of August 13th. We now know from Chris's confession that the girls were awake when Shanann was killed. He said Bella walked into the room afterward and saw something was wrong. He didn't explain what he told them, only that they didn't ask many questions. They followed him. He loaded Shanann's body into the truck. Then, he placed Bella and Cece in the back seat. That ride, 45 minutes to the oil field, is unimaginable. Shanann's body lay beneath a blanket in the trunk space, while her daughter sat behind their father, still alive, still trusting him. Chris claims Cece was the first to die. He smothered her with a blanket while Bella watched. Then, he turned to Bella. In his prison confession, he recalled her final words. "Is the same thing going to happen to me?" She fought back. She begged. Her final plea, as he would later admit, was, "Daddy, no." Those words haunted investigators. They haunt the public still,
I hope it haunts him until the day he dies.
because they weren't just victims. They were children, and they trusted the man who ended their lives. Their voices were never heard in court. They never got to testify, but their final moments spoke volumes. Frederick, Colorado, was a small, quiet town, the kind of place where people didn't lock their doors and kids played in the cul-de-sac until dark. The Watts family had blended into that rhythm perfectly. Neighbors waved, garbage cans were wheeled out in sync, birthday parties spilled into driveways. Then it all shattered. As the truth came out, disbelief turned into grief, and grief into outrage. Neighbors stood on their porches, arms folded, watching reporters descend. Satellite
So
trucks
many.
lined Saratoga Trail. Police taped off the Watts home. And suddenly, the idyllic two-story house with its manicured lawn became a crime scene known around the world. The surveillance camera footage, the polygraph test, the body cam videos, all of it became public. And with it came a growing sense of betrayal. This wasn't just about a murder. It was about the rupture of trust, the corruption of fatherhood, the desecration of innocence. Frederick had never seen anything like it. Counselors were brought into schools, churches held vigils, stuffed animals and candles lined the front yard of the now vacant Watts home.
He has affected millions, if not billions, of people.
People weren't just mourning, they were searching for meaning. How could someone so ordinary commit something so monstrous? Former coworkers of Chris expressed shock. He was quiet, dependable, one said. He brought lunch in Tupperware, talked about his kids all the time. But now, every story seemed to contain a red flag in retrospect. Moments that hadn't made sense before suddenly clicked into place. Chris's demeanor in the days following the murders was dissected like evidence. His calmness, his decision to go on camera, his refusal to break down. It wasn't grief, people realized. It was performance. The town recoiled, not just from the crime, but from the illusion that had preceded it. And that realization would ripple far beyond Colorado, because the media was only just getting started. The murders of Shanann, Bella, Celeste, and unborn baby Nico sent shockwaves not just through Colorado, but across the entire world. True
Hmm.
crime fans, psychologists, mothers, fathers,
If there are aliens, they know about too.
people from every background found themselves captivated, horrified, and enraged. Within days, the story became global. News outlets ran wall to wall coverage. CNN, BBC, Australia's 60 Minutes. The Watts case was
Everywhere.
everywhere. Not just because of what happened, but how it happened. It was the betrayal, the mask, the smiling family man who turned out to be a killer. Documentaries followed. YouTube exploded with theories, analysis, and breakdowns. Netflix released American Murder: The Family Next Door, a viral hit that used Shanann's own videos and texts to tell the story. It reached millions within weeks, and it reframed the narrative, not just as a crime, but as a warning about facades, social media, and the illusion of perfection. Podcasts dedicated entire seasons to the case. Experts debated whether Chris Watts was a narcissist, a sociopath, or something even more complex.
All the above.
People dissected his body language and polygraph footage. Some sympathized with Nicole Kessinger. Others vilified her. Memorial pages popped up online for Shanann and the girls. Strangers sent letters to Shanann's parents, offering condolences. The town of Frederick renamed a park bench in honor of the Watts children. But not everyone responded with empathy. Conspiracy theories sprouted like weeds. Some claimed Shanann was abusive. Others insisted Chris was framed.
Ridiculous.
YouTubers profited off wild speculation. The family became targets of harassment. It was a modern phenomenon, a crime that didn't just stay in the courtroom, but lived on in hashtags, live streams, and comment sections. In a digital world, even grief can be viral. And yet, through the noise, one thing never changed: the victims. Shanann, Bella, Celeste, Nico. Their names still echo in the minds of those who follow the case,
Not
not
Kessinger.
because they were perfect, but because they were real, and what was taken from them can never be restored.
They're real
Chris
people.
Watts is now inmate number 674796 in Dodge Correctional Institution, a maximum security prison in Walpin, Wisconsin. He was transferred there in late 2018, shortly after his conviction, due to safety concerns in Colorado. Even among murderers, his crimes put him at risk. Inmates
People
with a
want him.
history of violence against children are considered targets in prison hierarchy. And Chris, a man who ended the lives of his entire family, became one of the most reviled. His days are monotonous. He wakes at 5 a.m. His cell is small, 6 by 8 feet, furnished with only a bed, a toilet, and a steel desk. Meals are served through a slot in the door. Recreation is limited and closely monitored. He works a custodial job within the facility, earning just a few cents an hour. No internet, no direct access to media. But that doesn't mean he's isolated from the outside world.
Mm,
Chris still receives letters, hundreds of them. Some from people offering prayers, others from true crime obsessives, and disturbingly, some from women who claim to love him. In one letter, a woman wrote, "You made a mistake, but I believe in forgiveness." Another wrote, "I wish I could take care of you. You deserve happiness." These
he
letters reflect
did.
something dark and complex: the
Not
psychology of
anymore.
infamy, the allure of evil, the need some people feel to fix the broken. But Chris doesn't respond to most of them. When he does, it's brief, polite, detached. He spends most of his time reading the Bible, according to reports. He told one interviewer that he had found God in prison, that he prays for forgiveness every day. To some, it sounds hollow. To others, manipulative. But in prison, it's a survival strategy. He avoids conflict, keeps his head down, follows the rules, but he can't avoid the truth. Every
Mhm.
guard, every inmate, every passing headline is a reminder of who he is and what he did. And there are no appeals, no second chances. Chris Watts will
He's
die in
done.
prison. The letters didn't stop. Even after the Netflix documentary, even after the full confession, even after the autopsy reports were made public, Chris Watts became an object of twisted fascination. Not just a killer, but a character. Someone people projected their fantasies, anger, or forgiveness onto. Some of the letters were romantic. Others were theological. Some were disturbing in their own right.
Mhm.
A woman in Florida wrote to him for months, calling him her soulmate. Another sent photos of herself in lingerie. Some sent Bible verses. Some sent money orders, tiny amounts, a few dollars at a time, placed into his commissary account. There was a pattern to many of these correspondence. They were often isolated, deeply religious, or fascinated with high profile criminals. Some believed they could save him. Others seemed to be
Speak
chasing
out.
their own need for recognition by reaching someone infamous. Chris read them all. He kept some. He threw others away.
You know what time it is, guys. We're going to end it there for the moment. We're going to let you guys decompress what we just watched, um, what you guys' thoughts are. I definitely think this is documentary goodness. Um, I think it's a really good channel. I'd like to know what you guys' thoughts are. I'd love to see what they're going to put out in the future. Um, do all that down in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe, comment, like, and share. Hit the link in the description for this YouTube channel that is fairly new. And we will see you guys in the next video. So please take care, be safe, and as always, keep nerding on, and we will see you guys in the next video.